Pat, what's going on?
How you doing, Nico?
How you doing, man?
Are we live and direct, or are we
Yeah,
on
we're
air?
live right now. We're live right now. We're just telling
Okay.
you what we're gonna do on the show.
Okay,
Um,
great.
so what's going on, y'all? We are live. Pat has gotten here. He actually got here a little bit earlier than us, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for coming on the show.
No, it's great to be here. I appreciate it.
Nah, same, bro. You've been doing some crazy work covering Palestine, talking about all the ins and outs of the trials, and just generally staying very active. And so we're going to talk a lot about Palestine and just the different international and domestic reactions to that. But before we actually get into the meat of that, first of all, let everybody know where they can find you. First of all,
Yeah, so my our battleship is called 21stcenturywire.com, and I've been going since about late 2009, and started off as a blog site, developed it into a media platform. And so, yeah, I've been going strong there. And I'm also on TNT Radio, which, Niko, you've been on a couple of times on those broadcasts there. That's a new kind of internet radio stroke video platform out of Australia. It just is about 2 years old. So they're still developing. So it's a good
it's a lot of
platform.
great people.
Yeah, there's some good people there covering some good stuff. And so I'm there. I used to work with the UK column, which was the top UK alternative media outlet for about 11 years. And RT International, I did a lot of reporting for them over a decade as a volunteer freelancer, as an analyst as well. So I've worked with a bunch of different platforms, helped to build a couple, and still have retained my own platform, which is 21stcenturywire.com. So yeah.
That's dope stuff. Dope stuff, man. Pat, been around the block, man. In 2009, I was actually in basic training. I just graduated high school. So I had the baby face. I couldn't even grow a beard yet.
You're a Tar Heel, aren't you? Are you Tar Heel?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am a Tar Heel.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot of drama at UNC lately. Been a lot of drama.
Yeah.
But it's been kind of like that. Basically, I always say I was part of the last great generation of college students. I graduated in 2016. And that was right around the time that everything in college went to shit. Everything, everywhere. I wouldn't have made it, Pat. I'm not going to lie to you. The politically correct shit was getting me at the time. I just did not care that much about it. I'm like, y'all do know, like, there's a life outside of this little bubble that y'all live in that you're going to have to deal with at some point, because I've already dealt with it. I went to the military for 3 years first before I went to UNC. So, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience, though. I can't complain. So, really quick before we jump into the Palestine stuff, did you hear the news? Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race and endorsed Trump. What you think about that?
That was he had to survive, Niko. You know, it's like I saw the polling on Friday. It was like 5% coming into New Hampshire, and I thought to myself, looking at a super PAC, it's called Never Back Down. I'm like, Ron, you're going to back down, and you better do it quick. So he burned through $200+ million, somewhere in that neighborhood, Niko. I mean, it's like Michael Bloomberg type sums. And to do a distant third after spending that kind of money, it's kind of like scary. You know, John Kasich, all these guys did better than DeSantis did. They really positioned him to be this kind of alternative to Trump. And all these influencers came on board. Literally, they had thousands of people on the payroll of this thing. And I just think what a incredible waste of money to try to like inflate something that just won't rise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so Nikki Haley, so he had to endorse Trump, because I think with all of them, it's a competition for either a vice presidential spot, a cabinet position, or maybe another run in 2028, because he's been an absentee governor for the last 8 months in Florida.
Which is actually unlawful in the state of Florida. If you start running for president, you're actually supposed to leave your office.
Yeah.
So people don't know that, but that's a fact.
He had a huge mandate. Ron DeSantis won a big gubernatorial election back in 2022. And like, you don't ride in with a mandate like that and then just literally start campaigning like 6 months later, which is more or less what he did. So
and I was telling people, you know, I'm from Miami, or I lived in Miami before I moved to Rio, and I was telling people like he's clearly gearing up for a presidential run. And somebody had actually mentioned at the time, Like, well, I hope not, because that would mean he has to drop out of the office. I was like, oh, what do you mean drop out? They're like, you can't run for president and be the governor of Florida at the same time. You literally can't do it. And turns out that the state Congress actually put out a resolution, was like, bring your ass home and run the state. So what I found interesting about that, first of all, he dropped out and endorsed Trump, but like, bro, does he not have any self-respect? Trump basically emasculated this man, because just to be fair, DeSantis tried him, right? DeSantis did try him, and Trump retaliated and responded exactly how we would expect. And you just gotta wonder, man, do any of these politicians have any level of self-respect, Pat? They just let people shit all over them, and then I'm gonna endorse them.
They have ambition. So anybody that will turn their back on their state after winning a massive mandate like that, and listen, Florida is an important state in the union. Like how Florida goes is important for the country. So for him to just bail on Florida for his ambitions of being president, because let's be honest, Niko, what kind of money is behind Ron DeSantis? What kind of power players? You got Jeb Bush, the Bush family. That's what's backing him. Those types of establishment folks. They really thought
was a Jeb Bush.
They had a guy.
Jeb Bush of the election.
Yeah, so they really thought they had their guy there, and so that ambition that he showed by basically being an absentee governor, I knew he was going to endorse Trump immediately when he dropped out of the race, because that's the only way he can survive. Otherwise, his political career is literally toast. It's over.
See, so here's my thing about DeSantis, though. So a lot of people expected him to run for office, and they actually expected him to have a good chance if Trump didn't run, because he was supposed to be this younger heir apparent to Trump with executive experience who stood up to the establishment on both sides with like Russiagate, even with the pandemic. I can say the best thing he probably did was the way he ran Florida, which was actually not paternalistic at all. Some people said that he just let things. No, he actually let the cities make decisions based off of what was best for those cities. And I feel like that was the best decision to make. And in a lot of ways, Florida benefited from it. In fact, it kind of screwed us, because then everybody wanted to move to Florida, to be completely honest with you. So he was supposed to be the heir apparent to Trump, but then he got in. And in a lot of ways, he just started kind of talking like Nikki Haley.
Yeah, because here's the thing, Niko, and you can be a governor. You can be a governor in state politics. You don't ever have to weigh on a foreign policy issue. You just don't. As soon as you step into the Senate arena, or even the congressional arena, and definitely the presidential arena, as soon as you step into that arena, you've got to have some positions, credible positions on foreign policy. And when he was doing these sit-down interviews, remember when he announced his candidacy, he did one with, it was CNN or somebody, and I was just so unimpressed with his like knowledge of geography and stuff like that. And I know he was, I know he was a JAG in the U.S. military. I forgot what branch he served in. I think it was the Army or something. But he didn't really.
Well, probably. I think the Army.
He didn't understand like Ukraine or anything, and you could tell he was winging talking points. And I'm like, you can't sit here and pretend to be a credible presidential candidate in the United States of America that's engaged deeply in a major proxy war against Russia, plus on all these other theaters, and sit there and you're winging it. Like you should have sat down for like weeks and had have someone tutor you on this stuff. Like, what were you doing your whole adult life? So this,
he was in Congress. That's the crazy part.
Yeah. Oh, and he bailed in his congressional term to run for governor. So this is somebody who just goes from one to the next. He really thought he'd, and here's the other thing, Niko, what you said about COVID lockdowns, all true, vaccines. He was a little bit late to the game on it, but when he came to the game, he definitely owned it and all that. And he won a lot of points with the anti-woke and the Disney thing and whatever. But
he was starting to take Trump voters on that issue specifically, actually.
Yeah. So, but those were heavyweight issues at the time, but they weren't global, hard, heavy issues. And I think what happened was that a lot of these people that were so invested in the anti-lockdown, anti-COVID, anti-vaccine stuff, they really thought that this was going to be a major issue. This could pull voters nationally. And guess what? This is a gas and groceries election more than anything. I don't think as big as the COVID thing was, and certainly I was definitely fighting on the front line of that. On the information side, it's a gas and groceries election.
Yeah.
It's also it's a sane foreign policy election too, because Biden has taken things completely extreme off the edge. And it's
Yeah.
begging for somebody to come and say, look, hey, we're friends with Israel, but this is a little bit too much. You'd see the response from the American public would be very positive, I think.
So,
For,
so
yeah, go
I
ahead.
feel like everything that you just said about DeSantis, just before we switch topics real quick, but everything you said about DeSantis is exactly why I think AOC won't run. I think there are so many people who get caught up in the single issue, right? And it's usually a domestic issue, whether it be COVID, whether it be something about racism or whatever that issue might be at the time, abortion. They're like, yeah, I got charisma. I really got I really built up national popularity from fighting for this issue. Then they start to run for office. And now, especially now, one of the first things you're going to get asked about in your major interviews or any interview you do online is a foreign policy issue. And then you find out that these people are woefully unprepared to be the commander in chief. Like that's basically what it amounts to. And you see, I mean, Nikki Haley, I need a reimbursement. The taxpayers need a reimbursement with her checks from when she was ambassador, because apparently she just showed up to fucking vote and that was it. She
Yeah,
didn't do
she did.
anything when she was, because when she starts talking, I'm like, what?
Oh, no, she was reading off of briefing sheets handed to her probably by, the Heritage Foundation or whatever the think tank is. What's his Bill Crystal? Forgot the name of the thing. But she's reading off that stuff. She's reading State Department diktats. She doesn't even show up when Russia gets to speak. She and her delegation got up and walked out most of the time. So like she wasn't an ambassador. I spoke to people in the UN press corps while she was there, and they said she was a total joke, and she didn't appear to be that sort of smart and competent. She was literally there as a sort of a placeholder, an actress. I think they gave her that position. She was kind of making a power play. You remember when she during, I think it was when she left as governor, and she potentially could have challenged Trump. Trump was very weak. He's getting attacked from all sides. You remember right at the end of the 2016 election, the Russiagate thing was in full swing. She kind of brokered a deal there, and the establishment said, "Take Nikki," and that gave her kind of.
I was going to say, because she actually, if I'm not mistaken, she said if Trump runs again, she's not going to run. She was one of the ones who said it, right?
Yeah, I think I don't know for sure, but that sounds like something she might say. She did sort of an Andy Garcia or an Alec Baldwin. I'm leaving the country if Trump's president. I'm moving. Moving to Cuba.
There are a lot of Republicans. I mean, look, shit. Even with this election, a lot of Republicans. You see, like Candace Owens and Mike Cernovich and all of them were kind of like switching sides to Vivek. Woo! They hit that switch right back. Oh shit, our bad, guys. Our bad. Sorry. We thought that I don't know what the hell they saw in Vivek. Once again, he's the only person I know that's famous for being rich, and that's literally it. We don't know what the hell he did to get rich. He ain't never produced a single product. He just rich as hell.
How about mRNA vaccines or lipid nanoparticles?
I forgot about that. Yeah,
that's that's the business for Vexin, unfortunately.
But he don't want to mention that. I know he had one of his products that was like included, which once again, so he still never produced a single successful product, and is rich as hell. So I want to move on really quick. So you saw the video of Netanyahu basically saying that Israel needs to rule, and he specifically said it from the river to the sea if the world is to be safe. Pat, help me out real quick. What was I specifically told? What were we specifically told by the ADL and by the Zionist community in general about that specific phrase? Did I miss something? Did something change in the last week?
Yeah, and Elon Musk, I remember, issued a diktat that if you say from the river to the sea, that's implying genocide of the Jewish population in Israel. That's what they said. But, it's funny, if you look back at the Likud charter, this is Benjamin Netanyahu's political movement, extreme right, extremely warlike. It's literally from the river to the sea. That's a Likud charter. So they bang on about the Hamas charter, and you probably saw all that coming out of the gates on October 7th. The Hamas charter they went for this river to the sea thing very quickly. And anybody who's followed the Palestinian cause over the years knows that that is a liberation chant. They've been chanting for decades. It's never implied genocide. It's a freedom chant, quite obviously, duh. But some crazy things have been repurposed in media, and has been. You remember when the OK sign suddenly meant white supremacy? It was a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Someone
That
was trolling
random. I never
someone.
knew about that.
Someone was trolling, and they were making fun of that, and they got picked up by certain media pundits and progressives that basically said that they believe that's what it was. Next thing you know, people are getting sacked from their jobs for being in Twitter or social media posts on Instagram just saying okay. So this is the same thing with River to the Sea. It's not genocidal. It's the opposite.
And the ADL was actually very specific in saying, no, this isn't a river to the sea, or this isn't genocidal. This is just a regular thing that Palestinians say. The ADL said it up until October 7th.
Yeah.
I want to play for y'all and play for you Kirby's response to this. So he was asked about this in a press conference, and his response is, I give you two guesses at what he said. Can you give me one? Can you give me a guess of what he said? Who you think
what he meant.
Pat?
I haven't seen this, but that's not exactly what he meant. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Who do you think he blamed?
It must be Hamas.
Did the president address Netanyahu's use of the phrase "from the river to the sea" in their conversation today? I know the White House has previously said that phrase is divisive. So
I'm not aware that specific phrase was discussed.
Them using that phrase.
Look, there's a connotation with that phrase. We've talked about this before, but when you use the phrase "river to the sea," it speaks basically to the mantra of Hamas and in their manifesto, where they basically describe the geographic bounds of what they believe to be Palestine. And if you look at it on the map, if you go look at the four corners that they describe it, it's basically the state of Israel. They just don't believe it should exist. So again, it's not a phrase that that we recommend using, given because of that context.
He didn't answer the question.
I understand. I don't have anything more on that, and I certainly don't.
He just fobbed it off on Hamas, basically. This is ridiculous. This guy is such a clown. You remember when he was who was he? He started at State Department, then he became Pentagon spokesperson. Now he's White House spokesperson. It like his highlight reel, his career highlight reel is unbelievable. His highlight reel.
What my thing is, so it's so funny. It's exactly what you said, right? This phrase originated from the Likud charter, and he immediately, as a deflection, tries to pin it on Hamas. And what's even funnier is like he's acknowledging, at least in his mind, the mind of Zionists, it's a genocidal statement in their minds. And she's telling him, Netanyahu just said this. By the way, in the middle of a trial with the ICJ, where they're trying to deny genocidal intent, right? to make it even worse. So, like, where's the outrage? I'm just like, it's been pretty silent. Do you know that the I don't know if it was Israel. No. It was News 20, iNews 24. They took it down. They took down the post because I don't know. I guess because it got translated and they weren't expecting people to translate it.
Yep.
But yeah, they took down the post, the original post. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Netanyahu was speaking in Hebrew originally, and it was translated. Yeah. No, it was clearly that's what it was. But that really destroyed so many pieces of the narrative. Their propaganda front were just complete, and Bibi Netanyahu just did it for us. He literally just smashed it himself. So the front is unbelievable. Like the arrogance, the chutzpah, to use a Yiddish term, of Netanyahu is pretty unbelievable. They don't care at this point. I mean, would you care?
Do you think the U.S. is responding to them like, yo, what the fuck? What are y'all doing? What are you doing?
There are people. Yeah, there are people in the U.S. that do that, but see, they're not in charge. Like, there's a lot. I'm
at the government. My bad. I'm at the government.
Yeah, the government.
Do you feel like Biden or his handlers rather are calling Netanyahu like, yo, you need to chill the fuck out.
You know what? Joe Biden's a funny old bird. Okay, He is absolutely crass and craven, but there's also this side of him that creeps out, that he might actually say the right thing or do the right thing once in a while, and have the right thought. And he probably, the inner Catholic in him that he claims to identify with might sort of come out, and the conscious might come out, whatever, where he might want to say that to Netanyahu. Maybe he did say something to Netanyahu and got slapped back immediately. But when he's on a phone call, there's probably about six or eight people around him.
Yeah, of course.
Why that phone call is happening, and they'll just kind of move the conversation on a little bit. But
they need to make sure he doesn't flush the phone down the toilet on accident. Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be 8 people. I was just on RBN talking about this Revolutionary Blackout Network, and I said what Netanyahu has actually been showing us, and what Israel has been showing us, is that the Western imperialism is effectively inextricably linked, and probably actually primarily based in Zionism. Like, we're learning in real time who actually runs the show. Like, for example, Epstein didn't work for the US government. He worked for them, right? Ghislaine Maxwell and her father worked for them. Whenever World War II ended, I mean, somebody, the founders of Zionism, if you will, literally planted them in the middle of it. And there were a bunch of people who were like, no. Most of the world actually said no. People don't realize that, but most of the world said no to Israel, but it happened anyway. Right? Okay. So, and if you look at the way that they're able to turn around, like they keep talking about October 7th, and people don't know that they just wake up randomly and decide to bomb Syria on any given day. Any day. And no one does anything about it, and no one says anything about it. They won't even address it in a White House press conference. But like, even with NATO powers, if they turned around, for example, and somebody had beef with Belarus and they just decided to drop a couple of missiles on Belarus, oh no, there would be, like, NATO would trip, because they're like, yo, you got to discuss that with us before you just start bombing countries, even if we have beef with them. But Israel never has to discuss it. Why is that?
That's because that tail is still wagging the dog, and it does represent. So Israel and America, think of it like a dysfunctional marriage. At some point, no matter how outrageous the wife is, there's no way you can divorce. The families are too intertwined, and literally, and the wife will take you to the grave if necessary. So. So
literally,
so Israel uses the United States for its own. It's grown from a project into a force onto its own. It uses the United States for clout, for military backing, for financial welfare and subsidies and things like that, and influence. And the United States has been using Israel, as have Britain, for the length of its inception, as their disruptive force in the Middle East to keep it unstable. And so it benefits the U.S. and the Anglo-American Atlanticist bloc. Israel benefits them because it keeps the Arab states unstable and not keeping Arab nationalism at bay. This has been the case since World War II. And during the Cold War, there was also an anti-communist element to this. Israel was actually much more socialist in its early days in terms of the political orientation, although Zionism has always been a constant, but it has shifted to the far right over the decades.
After Rabin was assassinated by the far right. Yeah.
So it's both. They both use each other. It's a very dysfunctional relationship. They're parasitic. Both of them use each other for different reasons. And Israel's very convenient. Without Israel, you might have a united Middle East. You might have a stable Middle East. You might have.
I literally was talking about that the other day.
You'd have imagine, Niko, if you had a common market from Lebanon or Palestine all the way to Iran, a common market with freeways. Imagine how that would transform.
Maybe more than that, man. You got to think. Like, Egypt would probably be a part of that. Libya, especially before Gaddafi was assassinated. That's what I said. Like, that, I feel like that is actually the U.S.'s greatest fear, in NATO in general. It's because, like, we focus a lot on the Russian Empire, how that was broken up. And if you know, I know you know the history. Like a lot of World War I and World War II is specifically about breaking up the Russian Empire. At the time, Germans could have been empire, but like the Ottoman Empire oftentimes isn't discussed despite how powerful they were, and it's because of how powerful they were. And they were able to kind of break them off silently because there wasn't a lot of news and information coming out that area if it wasn't about oil. And if there wasn't any news, they would just say, oh, look at how dysfunctional these people are. It just happened out of nowhere. But like what Gaddafi was effectively trying to do was almost reignite the unity of the Ottoman Empire, but it was going to be worse for the U.S. because it would be, for the first time, Africa and what the remnants of the Ottoman Empire were united. And there's no way that NATO was competing with that. None.
Yeah, exactly. The breakup of the Ottoman Empire drew a line in history, and this also coincided with the collapse of the British, or the disintegration of the British Empire. But it didn't really disintegrate. The Commonwealth networks exist to this day, not as strong and formal as before. But then the entrance of the U.S. empire post World War II, Bretton Woods, and everything that's happened till today. So Israel's very, very important in that respect, and it's like, it's how they've kept Saudi Arabia on side. Israel has, it's a triangle: Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia. The gambit that the Abraham Accords plays and the US play with Saudi was, we'll protect you from the Iranians, because the Iranians want to dominate you. They want hegemony in the region. Stick with Israel and the US. That's the gambit. And now
but Saudi Arabia really works for the U.S. I mean, at least they did.
But
now it's a little bit.
But now it's Saudis
muddy.
They've wised up. The Saudis have wised up slowly. They're wising up and realizing, why would we want to have trade missiles with Iran? I mean, that would just be the worst possible outcome. So they're realizing,
and they have no military to beat Iran. They have none. Not to beat them. Nobody does.
It's a net loss. The UAE as well. It's a net loss. So, I mean, things are slow to change, I think, because these are old orientations. They've gone for like 80 years. They're tectonic plates. Eventually, they're shifting. And this has really accelerated things here, the situation in Gaza.
With that being said, today we were talking about the fact that like Israel has hit its climax. The situation with Israel and Palestine, Zionism in general has hit its climax, and I don't think it's coincidence that it's almost at the same time that American imperialism and the American empires hit their climax.
Yep.
And that there's either going to be a break to one way or the other. Either it's going to be a total genocide of Palestine, or Israel as we know it will come to an end. So I wanted to show you guys this video. This is families of Israeli hostages. There are people being detained by police and taken to jail because of them speaking out or wanting to know about what really happened when they were held hostage, wanting to know the truth about why their family was held hostage. Because a lot of, we know now that Israel knew in advance about October 7th, didn't do anything. We also know, obviously, that Israel probably at this point, I would say that's very probable, are responsible for more murders that day on October 7th than Hamas wanted. And could be actually held responsible for. I'm sure they probably like, damn, y'all did more damage to Israel than we did that day. So here's a video.
אני כאן כי אני לא אתן לממשלה הזאת להרוס את המדינה הזאת. המדינה הזאת יקרה לנו. אנחנו ברחובות מ-2017 ולא ניתן להם. הם פשוט יותר גרועים מהחמאס. הכל בזכותם. עם החמאס נסתדר, אבל איתם פשוט מאפיה שדואגת רק שכחתי להתנגד בגלל שראיינת אותי.
Now, I actually said the other day that Zionism is the biggest threat to human rights in the world, and that Zionists are not an exception to that threat, as in they can fall as victim just as quickly as the rest of us. And we're witnessing that in real time. A soldier was actually gassed by Israel, and it was done deliberately. And they actually tried to hide the fact that Israel deliberately gassed them as a part of their Hannibal directive. And the mother found out, and they retaliated, right? They retaliated against her, and they took the military, the IDF, took his name off of his own gravestone. Yeah, they took his name off of the gravestone, bro.
That's
Do you think that we're at in the end times of Israel, if you will?
I think so. I think so. I just look at trajectories, and where is Israel on the trajectory? Are they in the ascendancy or are they in the descendancy? Clearly, they're in the descendancy. They can't come back from this and be accepted by their neighbors as a legitimate state. And here's something you hear all the time, which is interesting, rhetorical argument or a device. Okay, it's do you think, and it'd be like Piers Morgan, that you've seen the memes, do you condemn Hamas? You know, it's like literally every interview has that. He has to insert that. The other thing, does Israel have the right to exist? And this is another rhetorical question. And actually, you know, a country, what is a country? A post-Westphalian nation state is borders, language, culture, and a political structure. That's what holds the country together. And throughout history, countries have broken up and disintegrated. Countries have had civil wars. Countries have been divided. They've been subsumed by other countries or federations, balkanized. And one of the things that precipitates the breakup of a country or the failure of a nation will be when a ruling caste or ruling power decides, we're going to start treating people differently. There's not going to be one law that applies to everybody. We're going to divide up by languages. We're going to divide up by ethnicity. We're going to suppress one group to the benefit of another. This is the beginning of a civil war normally, or some sort of these sort of things. So Israel's an extreme example of that. So no country has a right to exist. Did Nazi Germany have a right to exist? Well, they're lucky they stayed together, but they did. Part of their country was lopped off after the Second War. East Germany went to as a Soviet satellite state, and it took decades and decades before it was reunified. Only after the collapse of the Iron Curtain, Germany did not have a right to exist, and that's because you can't determine if it has the right to exist. You know who determines whether a country has a right to exist is its neighbors. If you look at the UN Charter, recognition of a nation state. I'll give you an example, quick one: Iraqi Kurdistan. That was more or less a creation, in my opinion, of the British and the Americans trying to break up Iraq into smaller states. And when they had a referendum, you remember, I think it was 2017, in the fall, they had a referendum for independence from Iraq, and the referendum passed in Iraqi Kurdistan, but they didn't become an independent state, did they? Because Turkey didn't recognize it, Iraq didn't recognize it, Syria didn't recognize it, and Iran didn't recognize it. None of their neighbors recognized them. Therefore, ergo, according to the international system, the UN Charter, and just common sense, you're not a nation state. You're not an independent state. So Israel's is running into the same exact problem of legitimacy. Is the regime legitimate? Now, it could be a legitimate state if there's a regime change in Israel, or if it transforms into a more inclusive state. Then that's a different story. So
effectively if it becomes one state?
One state. So that's the question. That's the one that nobody wants to face, because that's the difficult one. And the reason they don't want to face it is because there's a deep-seated fear inside Zionists and Israelis that, the Palestinians will never forgive us about what we've done to them. That is the deep psychological fear of any narcissistic complex like this.
It's the same mentality that you have here in the U.S., basically. You can't allow Black people to get power because what if they treat us like we treated them? What if they retaliate?
You had the same argument in South Africa with the slow process of the de-apartheid transition of South Africa, and that was the big fear: white South Africans fleeing the country, taking all of their saying they're going to take over the banks, they're going to do this, they're going to get revenge for what we did to them. And what South Africa did, which was novel, they had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was very long and drawn out process, very painful, by no means perfect, but that had never been ever attempted in public before in a modern state, and they did it. So that was a unique experiment. So what I'm saying is there are ways to thread the needle from one reality to the next, but it takes political will. It takes political will. That's the problem. That's the
and like you said, you got to get the narcissists out the way, basically. That's because you got to think after what's South Africa of like the situation is a little bit different because like it could have went south real fast. There's a lot more South Africans, like black South Africans, African South Africans than there are of the white South Africans. There were. So like it could have gotten ugly fast, but the empathy that they showed and the fact that they were like, dude, we got to move on. We can't dwell because the more that we dwell and focus on this, the less time we have to develop and move on to just resolution for everybody. And now you look at obviously what took place, and now those people, those kids of the apartheid, are now challenging Israel and calling them out for their genocide, and they should take it as an omen, like of what could possibly come along. I want to be clear. I think that a lot of Israelis are actually waking up to it. I know the dumbest voices always get amplified the loudest, and that's generally what we see on social media, right? But there are a lot of people who are like, bro, you about to get us all killed. They're outside of Netanyahu's house, and I do believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, part of the reason that Netanyahu is trying to keep this going, and the other part of the reason that he started Lebanon, or this conflict with Lebanon, or wants to start the conflict and expand it, is because if Israel's at war, they don't hold elections, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's exactly suspended. So, and that's what's happened with Ukraine as well. The suspension of democracy, the suspension of elections, the suspension of all the freedoms and all this stuff, emergency measures, continuity of government. That way, the public can never stop to take a breath and pause. Because when you stop to take a breath and pause, if there's a ceasefire, immediately the political pressure comes from the grassroots to the leadership saying, how the hell did you get us to this position to begin with? But until there's a ceasefire, and that's why they haven't had one in Ukraine, this is why the US and Britain have been vehement in stopping any peace negotiations in Ukraine, because they know the minute that happens, Ukrainians will want to get rid of Zelensky and this government for basically trashing their own country. So that's the reality. Same with Israel. Netanyahu is now painted in the corner. The coalition that they have, it doesn't need to be Netanyahu. It could be Benny Gantz or whoever. They're painted. The Zionist coalition, that is the government of Israel, is painted itself into a massive corner where it has no choice but to double down. It has no choice but to double down.
So I want to play for you really fast part of this interview from AOC. So she was asked about the people who are basically saying they're not going to vote for Joe Biden for a plethora of reasons. We can get into those in a second. But this is primarily addressing the Gaza issue. And on Twitter, AOC has been kind of somewhat a little bit critical of Gaza, of his stance on Gaza. But you got to hear these. I mean, I'm gonna let her talk. Try to maintain yourself.
Had it or hit it, Joe Biden.
Hit it. You know, honestly, here's the thing. I think sometimes people want electoral politics to be, we overly identify with it's like if you vote for someone, they have to be the embodiment of you. And that's actually something that I think Donald Trump provided to a lot of people, where it's like, if you voted for him and if you were a Donald Trump person, like you want, like it symbolized so much. But I think what we have here in this situation is a more just honest thing. There are plenty of things that the president does that I completely disagree with. I think, right now what's happening in Gaza, I can't go on every single day seeing this. I don't associate myself with what's happening. But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that we just can't allow this fascist movement to grow in this country. And what I think is actually hopeful about our politics is that we can exist outside of electoral politics in organizing our communities and standing with our friends. And, if it's coming down to this next election, for me personally, the decision to vote is not a difficult one for me, because like, just because I'm voting for him doesn't mean that he embodies everything about me.
Right.
So that to me is where I'm at. But I think, you know, it's people are going to get mad on the internet because that's what they do. But I think we just got to be adults about the situation and realize like that electoral politics is just one, it's just one small sliver of how we make the world better.
Pat, go ahead, man. What you got to say?
I need a bottle of whiskey or something just to come down off that. I mean, that's just like, what on earth did she actually say there? She lost me after about 10 seconds. But so yeah, I mean, so she's going to vote for Biden again. He is the worst Democratic president, lowest approval rating in history. She represents the progressive wing of her party, a movement, and allegedly. And she's going to go for the old Mr. Magoo genocide Joe. I mean, it's unbelievable. Listen, see, this is a moment in history. This is a moment in history. If in life and in history, there's a few hills to die on that emerge throughout your life or your political life. This is one of those hills that someone like her should be prepared to. She enjoys her standard of living too much. You can tell. She likes the glam. She likes the status. She is not willing to do it. She is not a person of the people that she portrayed herself to be when she was younger. She's just totally the opposite, because she should be out all guns blazing and say "F you" to the lobby. I'm gonna take the side, like Mark Lamont Hill or people like that. Mark, he could have had a great career at CNN, but he chose principles over politics and power. And he's very outspoken on the Palestinian issue. Just an example of someone from the mainstream that basically lost a lot in terms of, you know, career status and money and all that to take a position on Palestine. She absolutely has taken that position, pro-Palestinian position, before, and then she got watered down. She got captured. She got herded. And I see that with so many of them. Even Rashida Tlaib, to some degree, has been browbeaten. And I don't understand what they're doing. They should just like go for it.
Yeah, they passed a resolution that Rashida Tlaib couldn't hang a flag outside of her office.
She should have come out and just basically sued them. I mean, these are issues that totally transcend even Middle Eastern politics. This goes right down to fundamental rights and freedoms. And these people would have so much grassroots support. They could literally crowdfund their own media outlets if they took a position like that. I mean, they'd be much more successful. Am I wrong? Much more successful.
No. The problem with AOC isn't like a lack of a mandate. Well, at least it wasn't. Now it is. But it, like, she knows the issues that she ran on are popular. She fundraises to the tune of millions every single election cycle because of it. It's a lack of conviction. It's like you said, she doesn't want to be the bad guy. I also think in the case of AOC specifically, she isn't as intelligent as she pretends she is. And when you do have to face Congress and, of course, the nation, and you're effectively on the opposing side almost all the time, you do have to be well-read. You do have to understand the issues. You do have to be willing to be contentious and fight those fights and not get embarrassed when you do. And she's lazy. She's lazy, and it's just easier to just make a bunch of money and run off on the plug like she did. I feel like it's interesting that she said, yeah, you know, the issue with Gaza, I just can't. I can't see it every day. So I disassociate from that. I'm just going to disassociate. What?
Yeah,
I don't think that's how it works.
I can't look at it.
I don't think that.
I can't see it. I can't look at it anymore. No, look, do you remember when she went down to the southern border dressed in all white and posed those pictures with the children in cages and all that? And then the fake crying and all that. I mean, okay. Get on a plane and go to Cairo. Go to the Rafah crossing. That's your photo op. That's if you're serious about being a social justice icon and being there for the people and all the rest of it, then that's what you need to do. That's what our leaders have done in the past. That's what Democrats have done in the past. They used to do that. They used to do that. They used to go on the ground. to big causes, and they didn't care. You know,
At least
those were
pretend to care.
yeah, though back in the day. I mean, look, you remember this the El Salvador Nicaragua issue in the 80s. That caused a red scare in Hollywood to the point where any actors who were supporting the government in El Salvador, which was socialist and communist leaning, who were going against the I think it was, you had the Contras, you had the Sandinistas, all the CIA was running amok down there, and they blacklisted celebrities, academics. There was kind of a reboot of the McCarthyite thing, and I remember who was the president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time was Ed Asner, the actor, and he totally fearlessly went against them. I think he was president at the time. It was in the early 80s. He basically said, "F you, we're supporting these people are getting slaughtered down there. The U.S. government's behind it. I don't care." And his sheer will brought so much support to him that they basically had to go like, no, we can't cancel these people. We can't cancel these people. It's the same in politics. There's no leadership. AOC is not a real leader. If she's a real leader, she'd step up for history right now, because this doesn't happen that often.
Even if she was pretending to be a real leader, Jesus Christ. I don't
Yeah.
know. Why do we even ask her questions about, oh, that's right, because it's time to get progressive votes when you know you don't deserve them. That's right. I don't know why I just asked that question. I do have a question for you, though. Do you believe that this issue would have been allowed to get taken as far as it has if Trump was in power?
This is a good question.
Not whether or not he would support it, would it be allowed to have been taken as far?
Ooh, I think here's the double-edged sword of Donald Trump. His biggest critics are saying that he's got a gigantic ego, and he's very insecure about that ego, and he's a narcissist and all the rest of it. But also, those are some of the traits that do make you a leader that will intervene in certain situations, because you don't want to be the person that watched it all basically fall apart and watch the whole thing disintegrate. And I think so he might well have intervened early because he's like, this is bad for Israel. I can see Trump coming up with that logic. This isn't good for you. It's not good for us. Yeah, we've got the message now. We got to sort of, you've killed 5 or 10,000. That's enough. We need to be seen to be doing something here. Otherwise, the whole region's going to go up in flames. I can see Trump kind of thinking ahead, like, there's going to be no more property investments in Dubai if this continues. So he's thinking more like, oh, how can everybody make money? Who can we partner with to build things and make prosperity and make everything look cool? So he's got a very different than Biden, who's been in government for I don't know, since 1970 or something, when he lied about his credentials.
Almost 50 years now.
Yeah, I think he got in the Senate when he was 26, 27 or something, really young, lying on his CV and all that stuff. But he's been in government forever. He hasn't really been out in the world. So he's not going to look at it that way. So maybe Trump, this is the thing about Trump, he confounds logic. But sometimes in the crazy, crazy world, that confounding of logic does sometimes create opportunities to intervene or to somehow disrupt or misdirect the normal processes. Because I know the British hated him. That's a good sign. When the British state intelligence services hate you, this is actually a really top mark in my book on his resume.
So here's my thing.
The EU and NATO hated him. NATO hated him.
Who did?
Yeah, NATO. The NATO brass hated him.
Oh, yeah. He got in that whole public beef with NATO. But it's probably over the Russia thing, to be honest.
The EU hated him. So this is not all bad, actually, if you think about it. But anyway.
I mean, usually, once again, any of those organizations don't like you. You get some positive marks from me, because you're doing something right if you're doing something they don't like, generally speaking. You're at least disrupting the order. And when there's disruption of order, that's when actual change can get made, because things start to get exposed. So you can't know what the solution is if you can't properly ascertain the problem. Here's what I think would happen. I don't think that it would be because of Trump necessarily that this issue wouldn't be allowed to persist. I believe that it would be a key election issue. And all of a sudden, Democrats like AOC and those who even pretend to be progressive would come out publicly and make sure that this is an issue that Trump will not be allowed to sleep on until after the election is over and the Democrats take office back.
Spot
and
on.
It's a slam dunk. And we know it's a slam dunk. Why? Because Joyanne Reed got it right, people. John fucking Cusack, who's been wrong damn near about everything over the last 8 years, he got it right. Mehdi Hassan lost his job effectively for being Muslim and being on the wrong side, being too judicious to the people of Gaza. What's that one anchor? She's at BBC. She was the one, her interview went viral when she was like calling the dude out, like, hold on, how are you going to say that they don't have genocidal intent? And she starts playing the quotes directly from Israeli leadership. She was actually pro-Israel at the beginning of all this. Yep. She switched her stance in the middle of all this. So if the issue is that easy to get and you just replace Joe Biden's name with Donald Trump, there's no way AOC gets this wrong.
Yeah, you're right. You're spot on. Yeah, you're correct. They would have used it to the maximum to tear him down, the Orange Man. So even if he pulled it back earlier than what Biden's just given it a free rein to Tel Aviv, but even if Trump had let it go for a couple of weeks, they would have destroyed him for it, basically. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. That would have changed. That would have changed the dynamic.
People forget that there are issues that happened during his administration with Israel and Gaza going back and forth. Everybody forgets because they were short-lived.
Yeah, there wasn't any pushback on the moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights, but those are too complex or nuanced issues for American voter.
There was pushback. So there was. So AOC, Rashida Tlaib, a lot of the progressives actually did push back on that. Now, if Joe Biden did it, probably not.
So he is Genocide Joe. This could only happen with Joe in office.
What pissed me off, Pat, is whenever I was explaining to people why I would not vote for Biden, and they were like, "Well, what if we get Trump?" I'm like, the thing that makes Joe Biden most dangerous is that he's a crypto fascist, and that he's the fascist that you're not allowed to criticize, which means he will get away with everything. And those people that you're talking about will push him left, they're going to protect themselves as they always do when there's a Democrat in power, right? That's why they always say the biggest scandal with the Obama administration was a tan suit. That's a motherfucking lie. That's a lie, and we know it. But Obama's a Democrat. He just happens to be the most charismatic Democrat in history, unfortunately. So he was always going to be more dangerous. Trump couldn't do anything. He couldn't twiddle his thumbs. He couldn't go to the bathroom. He couldn't blink twice. He couldn't do anything. Couldn't go to the tanning bed without people criticizing him. And they think that Israel would have been allowed to kill 10,000 kids.
Oh yeah,
with Trump in power.
Imagine the political cartoons of Trump with blood dripping and Netanyahu. I mean, that's what it would be, wall to wall, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, they'd be rioting. They'd probably be rioting in the streets.
Oh, for sure. The protests are crazy now. Imagine if it was. Imagine if it was Trump.
Forget it.
Jesus Christ. Look. In this whole conflict, another person got exposed. A lot of people got exposed since October 7th really started. One of those people was Elon Musk. Elon Musk went to Israel, which is like, who the fuck is Elon? He's a CEO of Twitter, or not even a CEO. He just owns it now. He's just a majority shareholder. But he's not a politician. He's supposedly a free speech, absolutist. That's what we told. But he comes back from Israel without visiting Gaza or the West Bank, by the way, and says that he's basically demonetizing, throttling, and removing posts that include From River to the Sea. He starts basically championing Israel talking point, Zionist talking point specifically. And I feel like he's been on a downward spiral since then, but I would even probably say since before then. We've seen accounts get deleted. We saw several accounts, pro-Palestine accounts, actually get deleted all at once, even though they're all back now. And now even conservatives are starting to feel it. I don't know if you've seen, but this guy Dom got
Liqueur.
got completely demonetized. He says, this is a warning to every content creator on X. Make content on other platforms as well, which should be a duh, but whatever. I was demonetized because 3 liberals decided to community note nearly 100 of my posts at once.
Yep.
For all of you with families, don't risk the roof over their heads on X when a few bad actors can take it from them.
That's right.
Please learn from me. And so Elon actually responds to this, which was kind of like, as Elon telling on himself.
Yeah.
Daddy issues, bro. I'm telling you, he got daddy issues because this man's need for validation from the world. Like, how you gonna seek validation from people on the platform that you own? Weird. He responds by saying, this is not accurate. While you are free to say whatever you want within the limits of the law, advertisers are also free to decide where they will advertise. If you find advertisers who want to advertise in your content feed, please let us know. This man just gaslighted the hell out of this dude. He gaslighted the hell out of Dom. He said, I've been monetized, Elon. That's the problem. All ads have been removed from my page, and I'm being targeted at this very second, actually. A new note just appeared. My ad revenue pay was removed the same day I was supposed to get paid. They can decide where to advertise, but X owes me for the weeks that it allowed ads on my page and profited.
Oof.
Yeah.
Pay me.
So
Pay
YouTube,
me.
basically.
Pay me.
Yeah. So he gets exposed because what he's basically saying is that, like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, we're not, the advertisers already chose to advertise.
Well, it's a weak,
Yo!
it's a
Go
weak
ahead.
reply by Elon. I mean, that's just such a milquetoast, lukewarm reply. I mean, why even reply, first of all, and then reply like that? So it's clear that it's because of what Dom is covering. Dom is challenging that whole cathedral with regards to Israel-Palestine. He has been involved in that conversation. I'm sure that has something to do with his demonetization. But yeah,
and the Epstein thing too. He's been pretty big on that.
on that as well. Yeah. So he's right. Don't risk feeding your family. It's so precarious. You know who's an absolute amazing guy is the co-founder of Wikipedia, not Jimmy Wales, who's still kind of in charge of it now. Says he's not, but he kind of is Larry Sanger, who left Wikipedia because he saw it was being gamed. You can totally game the Wikipedia system. You look at the pages; it's just horrible.
I didn't know that
the defamation.
I never knew that.
And Larry said this, and others. He said, Elon, this community note system can get gamed just like Wikipedia, where you have armies of editors on Wikipedia working for PR companies, for governments, for military, and then putting out fake propaganda, defamation, writing people's bios.
In my opinion, community notes was created to be gamed. That was the point of it. I once again, I don't know why people thought that the billionaire who got his billions from Pentagon contracts, it's all of a sudden going to be the champion of free speech.
Well, it's Elon could change that just by don't link community notes to monetization. And that one single policy allowed community notes to be gamed, and it gave incentive for people to game it in an organized way. If you take away the mechanism, then you take the problem away. I mean, like, I'm not a genius, but all he has to do is basically remove that problem, and because that's the source of the problem. That's what's driving all these people to game community notes, is the fact that they can get people demonetized.
Right, but like, he didn't even beta. Like, it's like he did. First of all, people were telling him that, like, the moment he posted about it, he said, "Hey," people were like, "Hey, yo, you do know that this is just going to be used to target people." Especially because we know, how many times have we seen community notes where people just have a difference of opinion, has nothing to do with the facts of the tweet. Even if the tweet says, this is my opinion, like, not even a fact that I'm claiming, it's just merely an opinion that went viral. A community note can erase hundreds of dollars in revenue from a tweet like that. And in my opinion, when you hire people like Linda, what's her name? Yacarino. to be the CEO when she's literally a censorship queen. That's what she's known for. Like, I don't know how we expect any other result.
Yep.
I think that ultimately, especially when it comes to this Israel-Palestine thing. Well, because for one, with X, people don't really know, like, it was a hostile takeover. He actually shouldn't have been able to take over Twitter. But he was able to. And for those of you who may be interested in knowing, he also did the same thing to Tesla. That was a hostile takeover. It wasn't like, people don't know that, but yeah. But to take over something like Tesla, to take over something like Twitter, bruh, that you gotta have something else kind of spinning the gears in the background to have a successful takeover. And that's something, once again, that you're only allowed to do if you got a couple Pentagon contracts. If you got, SpaceX, everybody thinks it's for private space travel one day. No, man, that boy got a weapon system that he made for the Pentagon that could travel around the world in an hour and drop a bomb wherever he wants.
Surveillance satellites and all that, data scraping.
Literally
and all
the plot for the second G.I. Joe. For those of you who haven't seen it, basically they create a weapon where you can drop a missile or a little, it's like a big ass metal rod, but basically it picks up momentum from space and it destroys entire cities without any nuclear fallout. That's effectively what Elon created for the Pentagon. So like, yeah, y'all thought that he was gonna, I mean, he ain't going on these trips to Israel and Auschwitz because he wants to. He got bosses. Like that's
true.
Do you believe that people might start coming around to the reality of Elon? Because I mean, I see a lot of people kissing his ass, Pat. It scares me. It scares me. I'm like, yo, we ain't learned this lesson yet.
So you think he was set up? He was set up for the Twitter takeover.
Yeah, I mean, do you believe that Bezos was legitimately the richest man in the world? No, right? I think we know about the CIA investing in Google Maps and then him or Amazon, or they're basically having him develop it and then giving Washington Post to him. It gave him $600 million to buy the Washington Post.
Yeah, that's a big acquisition. Yeah, in terms of influence.
Yeah. It was a quid pro, not Google Maps, excuse me, Google Earth, but it was like a quid pro quo. And Amazon, I mean, it's so
web server.
I don't know if we ever talked about this on your show, but I don't know if you noticed this pattern. Basically, because CIA isn't original, and that's just who they are. What they do is they see something like MySpace. They're like, "Yo, this would be a great idea if we were in control over it." They try to take it over. The owner says no. So what do? They start Facebook instead. Look at Yahoo. Yahoo was Google for you young bucks out there. Man, it seemed like nothing in the world would ever replace Yahoo. At the time, it seemed like inconceivable. Google came literally out of nowhere. Like when I tell you out of nowhere, and it was actually kind of like laughed at first, like, yeah, okay, this is going to replace Yahoo. Then they had their search engine just went from, oh, this is okay, to it made a quantum leap out of nowhere. You look at with Tesla, like even that, like having having all the patent rights to anything that you would need to make a fully electric vehicle, and then all the other companies wanted to do the same thing, but only Elon got all the subsidies. Right? So like anytime you have a platform, an idea, anything like that is successful and can be, and the government's like, man, we could weaponize it. They just take the little venture capitalist company, InQtel, and they have unlimited dark money. Congress gave them power to spend money, and we don't have to know where it's going and who they really invested in. And then you get the heir apparents like Google, to Yahoo, like Facebook, to MySpace. YouTube was the first of its kind, but it wasn't always owned by Alphabet. And actually, you could make an argument that maybe WorldStar was just as popular at the time as YouTube, if not a little bit more popular. There were a lot of video apps at the time, but YouTube just goes right after people started using it as a main source of income. So, I think that You don't become the type of billionaire that Elon Musk has become by being on the right side of history. You damn sure don't like. It just doesn't make any sense. No one. He's not that business savvy. I don't know why he like Elon. So Tesla was almost like Amazon. It wasn't successful until the government got involved.
Sure. There is an aspect, though, of managing expectations. And when you're building up an iconic persona, an iconic brand, Elon really pushed the boat out by saying he was a free speech absolutist. And part of your power is not just derived by the size of your bank account or how many shares you've got in Tesla or whatever. It's designed. It's derived from the amount of people that will support you, like people that will go to the wall for you because they believe in you and your mission, whatever that is. And a lot of people will go to the wall for Elon because he came out and basically as a free speech champion. Now, my personal,
he had a unique mandate. Yeah, for a billionaire, he had a unique mandate from the people. Yeah.
So I'll tell you, I got an email in October 2021 from Jack Dorsey's cabal at Twitter saying you are banned for life from this platform. Do not even try to log in. We'll recognize the IP address. We'll cancel any accounts that you're associated with. You're banned for life. So 18 months later, Elon Musk let me back on the platform. A little bit less, probably like 14 months later. Elon Musk's person or whoever in the Twitter care department, whatever it was, I got an email saying, you're allowed back on the platform. I was surprised. I didn't think it would happen.
I forgot that you were banned for a bit. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I questioned the COVID and I questioned the whole vaccine thing. So I was just basically, banished forever. So I do thank him because I wouldn't have this platform if not for what he's done. But what you're saying is all valid criticism. Is to where is it going? Where are things going? Is he going to uphold?
Well, there are a lot of people who were brought back, right? But because of that, people were ignoring one who wasn't being brought back. So there was that. Like, why did it take Alex Jones, for example, so long to be let back onto the platform? It didn't make any sense. And the only time they let him back onto the platform finally, and it was to basically do what? To defend Israel.
Exactly.
By coincidence. Garland Nixon made a joke about the State Department. It was literally a joke. And they banned him. Oh, man. I think Garland is still banned from access to his account.
It was nothing. He did nothing. I forgot what they did him over. So there's a couple of others like that. Garland, unbelievable.
There are some of the medical freedom doctors that are still not allowed back on. There are just a lot of people that he let on because it was like, look over here. If you're looking over here, you're not actually looking at my inconsistency. And like, why are we taking? Oh, you want this person on? Here's a poll, and I'll decide. Like, bro, what the?
I saw that. Yeah, run a poll or something. Vox Populi, voice of the people, or whatever, people's voice. That's like, not. But
that's ridiculous. Are you a free speech absolutist or not, Elon? That's what it is.
I think.
Why are you running a poll?
I think he's also managing sort of stuff on off the cuff. For instance, when they got rid of the Twitter logo, and one night he said, "Oh, it's going to be called X. It's coming tomorrow. Does anybody have any ideas for a logo?" He tweets out. And so look at the logo right now. Look at that X. You know where that X came from? Somebody copied Microsoft Sans Unicode. It's a free font. That's literally the X from a free font that's loaded on every machine. And that's it. That's the new logo. Like, what is this for a brand? I mean, it's the worst rebranding
that's
ever.
The billionaire business genius, Pat. Come on.
Oh, I know. So, I mean, he might have been, having a transcendental experience with DMT or something with his buddy or something when they did it that night. Who knows? But
that sounds like some shit Elon would do. That's the worst part.
Man, it's just like, so that's how you're running it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're doing all right. But you could be doing better, Yeah.
I can't say, I just feel like it's same boss, same like new boss, old boss, basically type of situation. Even the people who are making money off of it, they're admitting now, like, hold on, why are we getting less impressions? Like, nothing changed.
Yep.
I'm paying more, but the impressions are less, and there's nothing about the audience that changed. only the checks got smaller, basically. And it's not it. And part of it, in my opinion, is about the Israel-Palestine conflict. I think that it was clear that they began throttling people after January 1st and throttling content. I think basically after everybody came back from vacation, from the holiday vacation, they did whatever they had to do. And I think that also Elon made his intent pretty clear after he got back from Israel, what he was planning on doing. And we're seeing that coming to fruition right now. I want to shift gears really quick to this disease X. I don't know if have you seen the video that, not the one from the World Economic Forum, but basically the one that came right after? It was on, I'm gonna play it right now for you. They're already preparing vaccines for disease X that supposedly isn't here yet, but we're being warned about, but it's somehow already, like, they're already prepping for something that they just started talking about, but they've been prepping for years in advance.
Has unveiled a new vaccine research facility where scientists are working to prevent future pandemics. It's located at Porton Down, a high-security research facility best known for its work on chemical warfare. Experts are preparing for what is known as Disease X, or the next pandemic virus. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes was given rare access to the facility.
The delicate task of protecting the nation's health. This is one of the laboratories at Porton Down where scientists are analysing current threats, new variants of COVID, for example, and trying to identify new ones. Inside these purpose-built labs, more than 200 scientists working for the UK Health Security Agency are helping to develop and test vaccines against a range of diseases. It's vital work to keep us all safe.
We've got, in many respects, the toughest job in the world, which is to protect health against infectious diseases and environmental hazards. And it is tough because we know that the risks of new and emerging infections, including those of pandemic potential, is increasing.
We don't have to watch the rest of that. Or I don't know if you heard it, but it basically, Pat, why are we preparing for something that hasn't happened?
Good question. You're getting close to the nub of the issue. Okay. So Porton Down, this is the bioweapons research facility in Britain. You heard the British accent. That means it's all very serious and official.
BBC.
It's all above board.
Oh shit.
It's all above board. And they said,
you heard the accent, but you know it's official.
It's all very, very credible. So
it's not Chinese, so it's different, right?
No, it's British. It's British. You pay attention. So the Health Security Agency, that didn't exist before 2 years ago. That's literally the DHS in the war on, particles. I like to call it. So it's like the DHS didn't exist before 9/11. The health security is biosurveillance. Basically.
Oh shit! I did not know that.
Biosurveillance. So it's to protect the public from a future pandemic. So there were no sort of global pandemics in the modern era until 2020, till 2020. And all of a sudden now we got to be on the lookout because there's just more coming. We're sure of it. There was one in 2020 and there's going to be more, and it's going to be disease X and this and that. Variants, this variant. That's actually why I got my account nuked on Twitter, because I questioned the existence of the Delta variant. So I've done plenty of research into metagenomic sequencing, PCR testing, enough to know that the biosurveillance that they're doing using these testing methods can pick up anything, anywhere, because the primers they're using in the tests are from computer-generated, computer-modeled genomic sequencing. So there's no real viruses in the mix in any of this. And
they also admitted it in their paper, like they were using the wrong. They were like basically hyper magnifying, and the cycles were coming back. That like if you had anything, basically made it look like you had COVID, even if you didn't have it. And they ended up having to, like, on I want to say the WHO website or the CDC website, they actually had to change the requirements to be deemed as COVID positive for the PCR testing. So I'm like.
100%.
So you telling me that the numbers were wrong this entire time?
100% false positive rate. if you do these tests a certain way, and they were doing that way because it was in the protocols. So, but here's the worst part about it is the tests aren't testing for what you think they're testing for. But it created bad data, and that bad data went into epidemiological models, which then showed us a spread that wasn't there. And variants, the term variant was never used before 2020. It was always called strains and mutations. They invented a new term called the variant.
And asymptomatic.
Asymptomatic spread. The asymptomatic spread didn't exist before 2020, but all of a sudden it's a thing. So this is like sorcery on a level. So what you need just to understand, and we can talk about this in a future session. I'm going to point you to an online resource, which I'll get you a key to on this, with like 90 seminar sessions on all the different aspects of this. But virology and pharmacology are two sides of the same coin. Without virology, pharmaceutical companies don't have the problems that to create the solutions, which are products, and vice versa. The two cannot function without each other, and one funds the other. One funds the other research. This is a familiar pattern that we should be copying onto here. So this has been going on for over 100 years. And it's just built up into a mega industry that now has such penetration in government and funding mechanisms and things like that, including In-Q-Tel, who you mentioned before. They bankrolled Metabiota, which Hunter Biden's Rosemont Seneca did the seed capital funding for. In-Q-Tel. That's an In-Q-Tel company. Biosurveillance in Ukraine.
I know that.
Biosurveillance. So all of this is just an incredible, and to me, it's a giant con. But you need to come up with a lot more receipts and evidence to show people why it is this, and the pedigree behind it. That takes some time. This is an incredible lattice that's been constructed, unfortunately. Biodefense, biosurveillance, and all this other stuff. And unfortunately, there was a massive power grab in 2020, 2021, 2022. And it's a big area. But what you need to know is that if you think something's fishy about what happened in 2022, it absolutely was fishy. And in my mind, and many other people who are experts, very, very well qualified, will tell you there was no pandemic in 2020. There was a PCR pandemic, a pandemic of testing, a pandemic of biosurveillance. That was the real pandemic. There wasn't a little.
Which the CDC admitted to.
There wasn't a little spike guy that traveled around the world in like 13 days and managed to get to Fiji and Africa and Asia. No, it did that. I don't see any evidence that happened. But for me saying that, I could get banished from social media platforms before just for saying such a thing.
For sure. YouTube's probably gonna be on my ass after this, but whatever. What's also funny is, like, remember how the flu just disappeared, Pat? No flu. 2020, 2021.
It was scared away by COVID. COVID muscled it out. That's what I was told.
2023 came back in full force somehow out of nowhere after COVID was over.
Yeah. The flu was just laying in waiting. It was just keeping a low profile. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because that's what viruses do. They just hang back, keep a low pro.
Hey man, I'm gonna take this year off. You got it? All right, bro.
Yeah.
In about 5 to 10 years, Pat, somebody's gonna look back at that and they're gonna be like, nobody noticed this. And like, no, y'all just removed everybody off of social media who noticed it and told us that we were all crazy.
That's correct.
Yeah. Because we said back then it was like the flu just disappeared. Y'all sure all these people that don't got the flu? No, it's flu-like symptoms, but the difference is you die, allegedly. Well, like, no, but you can die with the flu, and it actually seems to be targeting the exact same people who would get the flu, who would die from the flu. That's the same people dying from COVID, allegedly, right? Except for the people you're putting on ventilators that don't need to be on ventilators. Those people are also dying from COVID, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Did you see that? The Chinese scientists create a mutant coronavirus strain that attacks the brain. It has a 100% kill rate in mice.
Absolute bullshit. Pardon my French. So if you look at the paper on this, you look at the
Mhm.
methodology section on the paper, and that's where you should go straight away when you see any of these papers on PubMed or any of these scientific journals. You go straight to the methodologies. How did they come up with this claim? Okay.
Mhm.
And it turns out it's the same every freaking time. So they'll do cell culturing and they'll do things to the mice. They'll inject, they'll put the syringe down the nose, down the larynx. They'll even inject it into the brain, and they'll say, and if the the animals die, they did it with the ferret, the ferret experiment with quote gain of function. All these ferrets died. They killed them, and they said, "Oh, that must have been the virus. Must have been the virus." So they mark it down and they say, "No, there was a gain of function. The virus gained function," sort of thing. And it's just like when you study the scientific methods that are employed by some of these people, it's unbelievable. So there were other findings and other opinions in this paper, but they take the one that's the most sensational, they'll put it into a headline, and everyone's freaking out. No, the Chinese are at it again. I mean, so here we go, a rerun. The same,
Yeah,
same
and
thing.
it's they always say the Chinese. I'm like, y'all keep calling it Chinese virus, but that money looked American to me. I saw some white men on them $100 bills.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's more than just American money. It's American intelligence. This is a global
Mhm.
industry, and this is how you can also this industry is embedded in countries at the government level all around the world. This is like a network, okay? Pharmaceutical, virological, and all these people went to medical school in the US, in Britain, okay, all of them, in China, and all these top public health people. They all read from the same playbook. They get the same instructions, and they move like one in unison on this. This is
Yep.
how this happened.
And you
This is
know
how this
what's
happened.
funny about the medicine that actually works at all, is that the thing that makes it work is actually some herbal ingredient
Yeah.
that they just mix with a bunch of chemicals
Yep.
unnecessarily. Like it's all. I'm like, why? So, for example, in Brazil, so they have this medicine called Preloni that a version of it used to be available in the U.S. It's no longer available in the U.S. They also have Torsilax, which would be effectively an ibuprofen, right? So Preloni would be a painkiller and an anti-inflammatory, and Torsilax would be, probably the closest thing would be ibuprofen or Aleve, painkiller. So you don't have to actually eat before you take either of those. Which obviously, if anybody's taking a Percocet or ibuprofen and you don't eat, you feel like you're about to die because it's burning the lining of your stomach.
Mhm.
So the first thing I asked myself was, hold on, I don't understand if this can, because I'm gonna tell you right now, I had shoulder and upper back problems for about 2.5, 3 years that came from my time in the military. It just caught up to me basically. And I thought it was something I was gonna have to get a surgery on. And I took this medicine for 2 weeks and it just disappeared. I was like, what the fuck? That's weird. I was taking ibuprofen, I was taking whatever I could just to get through the day in the US. And I realized we didn't need the stomach lining burning or stomach burning fucking ingredient, whatever the hell that was. So it's like, what exactly are pharmaceutical companies even doing? You're not even inventing anything new. You're just taking what's already been invented, using it as a part of the ingredient to this chemical mixture, and then putting it out there like it's a solution when you could just really just offer the herb itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And the pharmaceutical version makes you sick and gives you other side effects, which you need other medication to deal with. And there you go. That's the business model. That's it.
Exactly. It really does. It makes you sicker. I mean, I can go on for days, man, about just antidepressants. I've never taken antidepressants, but I haven't met someone who's taken them and the outcome has been good. I could tell you that. Personally, I did shrooms. That's what I did to get over my depression whenever I had it, and it changed my life. It changed my whole perspective on the world. And the reason I tried it was because I learned that in Portland, they actually started using them. Psychologists started using them to help treat people's depression. And then I learned right before I moved to Brazil that for depression and more, indigenous Americans in Brazil fought to get psychedelics legalized, all natural psychedelics legalized. and they were successful because of the culture, but also because of there's actually scientific method that was applied to learning whether or not those psychedelics actually worked. And if you really want to know why some psychedelics are illegal, or something like kratom, for example, kratom is oh my God, it's heaven.
Oh, kratom,
Painkiller,
yeah.
natural Adderall, and you get different strains. Like kratom has actually been broken down to a science. And I remember whenever it started picking up steam in the US, they literally started planting stories about people died because of kratom. And then you actually look at the story, it's like they found kratom in the system when someone died in a random drunk driving accident, and they were actually the sober one and the other person was drunk, like shit like that. Like it's really a racket, man. It really is. And it's scary because, like you said, they make these drugs so that you're eventually forced to take other drugs.
Yep. Yeah. Psilocybin, the active ingredient in psychedelic mushrooms, and all there's a whole bunch of new stuff coming out. There's things in the Brazilian rainforest that haven't even been discovered yet. They haven't even been discovered yet. They will one day be discovered, hopefully. But yeah,
or if they've been discovered, it's been kept under wraps, which is
So when you see disease X, when you see you're just think scam. Just think scam. That's don't even need to get into. Don't fall for it again. These people got enough out of us the last 3 years. Don't give them an easy ride again.
Before I let you go, do you think that people will fall for it again? And do you think that like the reason, because I remember a lot of people were predicting that they were going to start bringing back mandates, and they were going to start like travel mandates, vaccine mandates and things like that. And it seems to fell through.
Yep.
I think they're going to fall for it again, or you think they're done?
No, I think they went too far, too quick, and a lot of people were just, wringing their hands a little bit too much at how much they could get away with in a very short space of time. So I think that's delayed the agenda, and so it'll delay it for a few years, perhaps. I don't think they'll be able to do a play like a virus or a pandemic at least for 10 years, because the people are just. There's too many people that are alive that remember what a scam it was, and they'll be around. And the young people also, sort of like Gen Zers, even a lot of them know it was a scam. So I mean,
in the remember, wasn't that like the WF was like Agenda 2020? Was it Agenda 24? Right? Yeah, they behind schedule, if I'm not mistaken. And I feel like that's why they moved on to Agenda 2030, right? Because they're like, man, we fucked that one up.
No, there's a lot of people that would like nothing more than to have the mask mandates back, to have the vaccine passports, the restrictions and all that. There's people that were in their element. Trust me. They love a good technocracy. That's probably about, 20% of the population, maybe 25. But
they don't want a thing. They just want to get told what to do.
They want structure in their life and order and regulations, and to be able to navigate through those by being a good citizen, getting a high social credit score and all that. But I think enough people are wise to it. I think it's going to be very hard to pull off for at least 10 years or something like that, until people forget about it. Enough people forget about it.
So I'm starting this new, before I let you go, I'm starting this new trend on my show. I want to know all my guests' favorite conspiracy theory before you go. So what's your favorite conspiracy theory? I don't care how wild it is, because I mean, over the last 2-3 years, one thing that we've learned is that conspiracy theories aren't really that wild. As wild as we might think it is, it really isn't. So what's your favorite?
Well, besides false flag attacks, 9/11, 7/7, don't really need to get into those too much. But my favorite one, and I don't have to.
Oh, I don't know if that's a conspiracy theory anymore.
Look, all I can say is this, okay? Why I'm not even I'm not going to indulge you too much in the details, but why on earth has no one returned to the moon after 1970, 71?
I figured you were going to say that.
I mean, come on. Has technology not advanced? There must be.
What do you mean? We could live stream from the moon.
I put a webcam on there. Put a webcam on there. I want to see.
We can't even get consistent internet today, but we could live stream from the moon, of course.
Why not? Why isn't there a lounge up there? Richard Branson should have already built, a hotel up there. Come on. zero gravity in or whatever, virgin zero gravity or whatever on the moon. Why has not happened? Come on.
I'm a moon based guy. I think that there's a base. I think there's a military base up there. I think that I think it's a resource thing.
Could be.
Resources mean that we don't have a reason to have these wars and all of this. A lot of these problems on the planet will probably disappear.
Yeah,
Right.
could be.
I mean, that you would think it's kind of like renewable resources. It actually would be easier for the world really to just convert to renewable energy. It would, and yet we won't do it, even though there's even a profit motive to some degree to do so. Yeah, they know that. Like, but then that would create disruption for all of y'all to take advantage of new businesses and things of that nature, and they can't have that. So, my favorite conspiracy is you're aware of you remember Chiquita in the quote unquote Banana Republic, right?
Yeah, Chiquita.
So I had this this conversation with my friend who is an atmospheric scientist, and we found out just on a random day that gamma radiation is actually real. We thought it was like, oh man, that's funny. What if gamma radiation was actually real? Turns out it is. It's largely apparently credited with the creation of the universe. Did not know that either. So I also found out that the human body is actually basically an antenna for gamma radiation. There's only one thing in nature that has as much gamma radiation as we do. Potassium C. Bananas. Didn't know this. Yes, we get our gamma radiation basically is through a process. Potassium C converts into gamma. Gamma radiation converts into potassium C and vice versa. Now, back in the day, I believe it's with the atom bomb, I want to say, or just bombs in general. Basically, once you convert potassium C, it can go through a process called, don't quote me on this, I believe it's called annihilation. Basically, you separate the atoms and then they clash. But the only two things that have that much gamma or potassium C that comes from gamma radiation is the human body, obviously, and potassium that comes from bananas. Because there's a lot of potassium in the world. Not all of it's potassium C. And if people remember, the Banana Republic situation actually started basically during the height of the Cold War. So my theory is that the banana situation was actually not about bananas per se, but it was made to seem that way because they didn't want Russia or their Cold War allies to know that we had learned how to weaponize potassium C through bananas and cultivate it. And they tried, by the way, to create this process synthetically, but it was too hard and it was too weak. It's actually the same process that creates lightning, I learned.
So bananas are good for you then?
So bananas are actually great for you, and actually they're specifically good for neurological disorders, which is and if you look up any type of medicine, any type of suggestion for like neurological disorders, they don't mention anything about potassium C, which is probably because they don't want you using potassium C. Well, at the time, especially, they didn't want any like bananas or potassium C being mass produced and being used for other purposes. But it's key for your nervous. Look it up, people. Like potassium C, key for your nervous system, key for your brain to function well. Basically, you should be eating a banana a day. And if you, I mean, think about it. Why are monkeys so smart? It sounds crazy, but like these motherfuckers are smart as hell, and they love bananas for some reason.
So a banana a day, an apple a day. That's it. You're sorted. We are nuclear reactors, actually. We are like
effectively.
We are a nuclear reactor. So that makes sense, actually.
Yeah. So I believe that there's a huge possibility. Well, one, I believe that that's what the Banana Republic was really about. And we were just hiding behind bananas. But like the US, like we'll invade a country and kill a bunch of people for oil, for minerals, for gold, all that stuff. We ain't really never did that for food. Not for food. If we did that, like we invested that many resources, created this shell corporation, gave them all this military power. Do y'all really think that was for food? For bananas? Like we really like bananas that much? How many banana flavored products were invented in the 70s and 80s? Not that many, Pat. Not that many. Weren't that many. I think that was what it was really about.
United
So
Fruit Company. Was it United Fruit Company? Yeah,
it was
Chiquita.
United Fruit Company before it became Chiquita. Yep.
Chiquita, yeah.
Mhm. So that's what I think that was that's what it was really about. And I believe that that's also like a rabbit hole entirely into gamma radiation and in general how it affects our bodies, how it affects the world. There was actually a gamma wave recently. It was actually around 2021. It was ironically around that same time that everybody was joking about getting superpowers in like the end of December in 2021. Yeah, man, that's what I think. I also think that the key to solving the degradation of people's neural pathways, I actually believe, relies in bananas. And it's going undiscovered on purpose because, I mean, you're talking about solving a lot of problems. Like you said, pharmaceutical companies run the world. So, yeah. But thanks for coming on the show once again, Pat. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, to find me on @21wire on X, Twitter, and you can find us on where else are we? Rumble, 21wire, 21stcenturywire.com. That's the mothership, as it were, for our media outlet. You'll find all of our interviews and content there as well. So yeah, I'm there. TNT Radio, Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, US, 4 till 6 UK time. So that's every day. And Sunday Wire on Sunday, we do a weekly omnibus news and analysis radio and now video program. Hopefully you'll join me on that. I hope one day, Niko, especially as the politics heats up and you have to game out all these crazy scenarios. Yeah, so that's on Sundays as well, same time as TNT. So yeah, around 12 noon Eastern time.
Pat, you're a busy man. I appreciate you dedicating some of your time to the show. But for everybody else, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream episode of For the People podcast. Make sure you like this video, share this video. Follow my Telegram for all news and updates, content updates, and all that good stuff. You can donate to the show through Patreon, through Bitcoin, Ethereum. I have all those addresses in the description. But always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.